Property ownership comes with certain rights that most people take for granted. That is, until someone decides those rights don't apply to them. When my grandfather, Harrison Sterling, purchased our land in 1972, it was special. It came with something most suburban developments could only dream about: a pristine 12-acre body of water called Sterling Lake. It was fed by natural springs and rainfall, with water rights that predated modern zoning by decades. The property deed was absolutely crystal clear. The lake, the shoreline, and the water itself belonged exclusively to the Sterling family. It was not community property. It wasn't shared access for anyone who moved in 40 years later. Certainly wasn't up for negotiation or reinterpretation. But Barbara Montgomery saw things very differently. She was the HOA president of Oakmont Valley Estates, a neighborhood that treated bylaws like scripture and property rights like suggestions. To her, a beautiful lake visible from the newly developed luxury homes on the ridge was a massive marketing opportunity. It was simply too valuable to waste on something as trivial as actual legal ownership. She had been eyeing our shoreline for years. She watched families enjoy private beach days and weekend fishing trips with intense resentment. It was the kind of bitterness usually reserved for people who had been personally wronged. In her mind, Sterling Lake should belong to the community. She believed it should be accessible to absolutely everyone. It should be transformed into the kind of upscale amenity that justified the premium HOA fees she had been collecting. The transformation started subtly at first. There were friendly suggestions at board meetings about exploring shared recreational spaces and community enhancement opportunities. Then came the casual comments about how wonderful it would be if neighbors could enjoy the natural beauty. She phrased it as if she were proposing something generous rather than aggressively requesting access to private property. When subtle hints didn't work, Barbara shifted strategies with the grace of a bulldozer plowing through a flower garden. One morning, I discovered wooden survey stakes driven deep into my shoreline. Bright orange markers were dotting the private beach like someone had claimed territory in a wild land grab. No permission was ever requested and no notification provided. There were just stakes hammering into ground that simply didn't belong to the HOA. By that afternoon, heavy construction equipment had arrived. Massive machines were churning up the carefully maintained shoreline to install a community dock system. It wasn't just a single dock, but an entire marina complex. It came complete with wooden boat slips, a large swimming platform, and a fancy pavilion for lakeside gatherings. The pure audacity of the project was genuinely staggering. Barbara hadn't just assumed she had rights to the lake. She had actually invested HOA funds into constructing permanent structures on property she knew she didn't control. She had no legal access to it whatsoever. She had hired contractors, purchased expensive materials, and begun construction without any easements or permits. She completely ignored the minor detail of property owner consent. When confronted, her response was completely delusional. It was delivered with the arrogant confidence of someone completely divorced from legal reality. She insisted the lake was a community resource. She claimed the HOA had a strict responsibility to maximize property values and resident satisfaction. She told me my refusal to share was selfish, unreasonable, and contrary to the spirit of neighborhood cooperation. The loud construction continued for 3 weeks while I quietly consulted with water rights attorneys and property specialists. What Barbara simply didn't understand was that lake ownership wasn't just about the surface water. It extended to the lake bed, the massive dam structure that maintained water levels, and the complex drainage systems regulating the ecosystem. The Sterling family had maintained that vital infrastructure for 5 decades. We managed water levels, prevented catastrophic flooding, and ensured the lake remained healthy and sustainable. It was very expensive, incredibly time-consuming work. Barbara arrogantly assumed all of this happened magically while she planned her luxury community, Marina. By the time her massive project was complete, it was genuinely impressive to look at. There were 12 boat slips with professional-grade docks. There was a huge swimming platform that could easily accommodate 50 people. solar-powered lighting along the shoreline, and that gorgeous pavilion she had been dreaming about. She even installed a professionally made, prominent sign. The sign warmly welcomed Oakmont Valley Estates members to their new community lake access. The grand opening was scheduled for Memorial Day weekend. It was complete with catered food, live music, and glossy promotional materials. It highlighted this exclusive amenity that justified the neighborhood's premium status. But what Barbara had utterly failed to research during her construction frenzy was the dam maintenance schedule. It was a massive oversight on her part. The earthen dam at the southern end of Sterling Lake required periodic drainage for structural inspection and sediment removal. It was a strict process mandated by Mercer County water management regulations, and it was scheduled every decade. The last drainage had occurred in 2014. The next one was due that very summer. It was already approved and scheduled with environmental agencies months before Barbara's illegal marina construction had even begun. 2 weeks before her lavish grand opening, the drainage process commenced. It started gradually, with water levels dropping a few inches per day as controlled release gates directed flow into the approved Mercer County drainage channels. Barbara noticed almost immediately. She showed up at my property, clutching a clipboard with the kind of frantic panic usually reserved for actual emergencies. She aggressively demanded to know exactly what was happening and why the water was receding. She screamed, asking how this could possibly be legal. Her expensive marina, she pointed out with increasing hysteria, was designed for very specific water depths. The floating docks wouldn't function at all if the water levels dropped. The swimming platform would become completely useless. Her entire massive investment would be totally wasted. The explanation I gave her was incredibly simple, but apparently very difficult for her entitled brain to process. The drainage was legally mandated, properly scheduled, and completely within my rights as the sole property owner responsible for the dam maintenance. If she had bothered to research before building, she would have discovered this information. It was all publicly available through Mercer County records. But Barbara had been way too busy measuring dock slips and planning grand openings to consider. Boring details like local water management, regulations, and actual property rights. By Memorial Day weekend, the water level had dropped 12 full feet. What had been a pristine, sparkling lake was now a massive, ugly mudflat. It was punctuated only by shallow pools of standing water and completely exposed lake bed. Her shiny new marina sat high and dry. Her expensive docks extended over bare ground. Her swimming platform rested on thick mud, and her boat slips accessed absolutely nothing. But the real revelation wasn't just the useless infrastructure. It was what the receding water actually exposed underneath. Her docks weren't just built illegally on my private property. They were constructed without any proper permits whatsoever. The swimming platform violated multiple county safety codes. The electrical work for her fancy solar lighting system had been installed by cheap, unlicensed contractors and posed serious fire hazards. The heavy pavilion foundation had been poured directly over federally protected wetlands. Every single structure she had built was not just a blatant trespass. It was illegally constructed and highly environmentally destructive. Inspector Harris arrived within days, summoned by concerned environmental groups monitoring the drainage. What he found resulted in immediate cease and desist orders. He issued severe violation notices that covered environmental damage and unpermitted construction. The Mercer County fines started at $10,000 and escalated quickly. They escalated based on the severity of each individual infraction. Barbara's luxury marina wasn't just completely useless. It was physical evidence of multiple legal violations now permanently documented in official county reports. The HOA emergency meeting that followed was absolutely legendary. Homeowners who were initially excited about lake access suddenly realized the horrifying truth. They had funded an illegal construction project that exposed the HOA to massive liability. The special assessment Barbara proposed to cover the fines and removal costs was met with open, furious rebellion. Absolutely nobody wanted to pay thousands of dollars to dismantle a marina that never legally existed in the first place. Recall petitions circulated that exact same night. Barbara Montgomery was forcefully removed from the board within a week. She was replaced by sane people who understood that property rights were not negotiable under any circumstances. They also understood that checking legal ownership before construction was generally advisable. The marina dismantling took to agonizing months. Every structure was painfully removed at the HOA's expense, dealing a massive financial blow. Every single violation was addressed with increasingly expensive contractor bills. When the dam maintenance finally completed and water levels returned to normal, Sterling Lake looked exactly as it had before Barbara's ambitious renovation plans. The shoreline fully recovered and the natural ecosystem stabilized. The only evidence of her illegal marina was the massive crater in the HOA budget. It became the ultimate legend of the arrogant president who built a dock on someone else's lake. She built a dock without ever checking if the water would actually still be there. Thank you for listening to this story. Let us know in the comments what you would have done in this situation, and don't forget to subscribe.